So I think assuming, and I know that our products cost us money, but if we think about in terms of most of us will have products that are below $100 price point and the actual cost of the business is far less than that. Like, always see a red flag when someone is willing to do something for nothing.
Building a business is tough and doing it alone even tougher. Welcome to She Talks, your go-to podcast for raw, relatable, and ridiculously useful business advice. I'm Lisa Jones, and I'm both a mum and a serial entrepreneur, and I'm here to help share real stories and proven strategies to help you scale up your business. Let's do this together. And today I'm chatting with Chantel Brayley, a marketing powerhouse who has worked with some of Australia's biggest e-commerce brands, including Petal & Pup, Lovingtan, and Naked Harvest. In this episode, we're talking influencer marketing right now in 2025. What works, what doesn't, and why so many brands get it wrong. Chantel breaks down UGC versus EGC, and even we explain what they are, how to find the right influencers for your brand, and why throwing free products at people isn't a strategy. If you've ever wondered how to make influencer marketing actually work, how to build a killer marketing team, or just how to find balance when you love your work a little too much, then this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. So, Chantel, you've worked with some of Australia's biggest growth brands. What was your first big break into e-commerce, and what made you realize this was the industry for you?
My first big break in e-commerce was actually quite a long time ago. And thank God it's all been taken offline. Hopefully no one can sleuth and find it. But straight out of uni, I actually was offered an opportunity to blog for a brand called Kitsch. You might be familiar with some of their hair ties and hair accessories. They're stocked in Mecca in Australia. But yeah, I started blogging for them. As you can see, I've got lots of, people who are listening can't see it, but I've got lots of hair. So it was a very easy win from fashion school student to freelance remote blogger. And at that time, I just loved the fact that I was able to work from anywhere in the world, which was really cool because I had moved to Australia, but I was working for an LA brand at the time. And I mean, since then, I've had like quite the journey with many different brands. But early days, it just felt like what a great opportunity and what a great industry. And it was a female founded brand. And that was something that was so new to me, I think, coming from a world where it was still very boys club. Like I graduated uni in 2008. It was very still boys club, I think, at that time. Yeah, it just seemed like something new and exciting. And I've been in love with it since.
That's amazing. And you've got such an incredible history of different brands you've been involved in. And we're going to talk about that on the podcast and unpack it today for our beautiful listeners. But I want to point out that what I'm really excited about talking to you today about is marketing as a general rule. All of my clients are begging for marketers at the moment. It's like a really big piece that e-commerce brands often have this thing where they evolve a product, they launch it in the market, and the ones that are super successful with their launches are the clever marketers. But that isn't everybody. You know, not all women who start product brands are even have any background or knowledge about marketing at all. And those that don't really struggle to build brands unless they have a strong marketer, either themselves or a team member. So today I'm going to ask you some questions for my female founders listening who are like, how do I get a Chantel in my business? But let's just start before we go into that with talking about marketing in general for e-com brands. I would love to know a little bit more. We talk about influencer marketing and UGC and even EGC lately. There's a lot of terms that we bandy around, but I would love to know a bit more about influencer marketing and where you think we are right now in 2025.
So I think 2025, and I say this in the fact that I really feel that my experience is so different with influencer marketing than most people you'll speak to. I think that this is the year more than ever that you are going to be able to make influencer marketing what it should be authentically within your business. It is a channel that people have more feelings about and are more triggered about than any other channel, but it's also the channel that you have the opportunity to really create stories and build relationships and amplify your reach for what should be a cheaper CPM than any other channel. It's kind of a choose your own adventure, I feel, this year, but it really is going to sit in how you want to manage the relationship and what really works for your brand, because those are the two places that I feel like most people struggle with. So when they don't like influencer marketing, they've kind of skipped some steps and tried to go for an easy win.
Right. So let's break that down a little because even for me, I don't use influencer marketing for my brands and perhaps it's not been something I'm super all over. So I'd love to know a little bit more about, say, so assume I'm a brand very similar to the beautiful listeners today on the call who might have, one or two staff and have got some traction and they're like, I've tried influencer marketing and to be fair, this is what I hear all the time. I sent a bunch of products out. Nobody did any work for me. I got nothing back from it. So I'm never going to touch it again. Like break it down for our beautiful listeners today as to what does actually work when it comes to influencer marketing.
Well, I think the concept and like as strong, independent women, very rarely would you ever do somebody for free that you have no connection with. So I think assuming, and I know that our products cost us money, but if we think about in terms of most of us will have products that are below $100 price point and the actual cost of the business is far less than that. Like always see a red flag when someone is willing to do something for nothing except if you are organically a part of their community. I know within SheCom, there are probably so many businesses that you've brought together that have created partnership, right? And there is that exchange where it's for nothing, but really there is a reciprocal value there. I would never trust anybody to do something for me for free if there was not some type of level of reciprocal work back or if there was not a benefit. So there are some creators that genuinely love helping small businesses. One that I think is like, she's a fantastic human being. And she also works really well with, I think, a lot of the audiences that I often see in SheCom because I see a lot of like more mom-centric businesses often because, you're solving a problem that you originally had. Bella Messina, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's phenomenal. Bella Messina will never say that she'll do something for free, but the amount of brands that I have seen that either go into paid collabs with her or alternatively, she likes their product, there is the exchange, and then she posts them. Their successes are huge, but this is because it is a mom creator who loves supporting small businesses, who loves having transparent conversations, and would also never support a brand just for the money. So, that comes back to that like authenticity factor for it. I work very closely with Georgie Stevenson. She's very much in the same. She purchases from brands all the time. And she just posts because it organically makes sense for them. So I think that conversation of getting people to do things for free, it really doesn't exist in this world. In America, it's actually a really big issue to try to do that work for free. There are a lot of legal problems you can run into. But there is still a little bit of a lane, I think, from a UGC perspective, where you can have that contra agreement. But that's because it's somebody who maybe financially wouldn't buy or couldn't buy the product, so they see benefit in the exchange. There's still something really in it for them. Whereas, Tammy Hembrow has 18 million followers. If she really wanted it, she could buy it. So I wouldn't trust, not that she would ever not follow up with a brand. We've worked with her. She's amazing. But I think that's just the example is you can't really expect anything for free when we all just don't have enough time in our days.
So really, I guess for summary, we've probably got a couple of different levels of e-commerce brand founder here. And if you're in the early stages, startup and low revenues, and you don't have the budget to spend on influencer marketing, but you still want some people to love bomb your brand, then what I'm hearing from you is finding some UGC and reviews on your website you can probably find inside of your community or extended community. And then equally, I'm such a fan of inviting our founders to go looking inside of their existing databases to see people who have brand love. And a long time ago, I worked with a hair brand and they had a super famous influencer in Australia. I won't say her name, but she's got a huge following and she organically had this product and freaking loved it. And like she would just do stories all the time. And actually she had an affiliate code. She didn't even want the affiliate commission for it, but we could track what she was driving in sales because people were getting a 10% off discount code using her link. It was like tens of thousands of dollars a month of sales coming organically purely because this influencer loved her product and it solved a problem for her. So looking inside of your existing audience to see, well, actually, who already loves my product that could create some, reviews, UGC, even some stories themselves inside of their networks to amplify it. Would that be right in that early stages of a brand? That's kind of where you need to put your focus.
Yeah, definitely. I think, pay attention to who follows you because there may be creators that are currently following you now. So again, like the exchange makes sense. Or like you mentioned, the ambassador programs or those, affiliate-based relationships. There are people who really know that they can see the financial benefits. So they will do that. And kind of the red flag would be if they don't want to negotiate with that at least being a portion of the contract, because I would be very worried if someone won't accept rev share as an option May not be the whole payment, but it's a
Right.
bit of a red flag if they don't want it as an option. It is different if discount codes don't fit within their brand. But then at the same time, I think this comes back to, really doing your research. And are you going after a creator that is high end, that is luxury, that would never post a sale offer, and you're putting a sale offer in that page? We talk about, sometimes founders aren't necessarily always marketers by trade, but I think this is where having intimacy of knowing your brand, knowing your customer is just going to be really important, because your creator should always be kind of an avatar for who your best customers are.
Totally. And here in Shecom, inside of our programs, we actually have like a whole module around what we call brand reps. So in the early stages of an e-com brand, you can actually go, especially as you already said, we have a lot of mummy style brands, and there are so many mummy style influencers out there that don't have they're like micro influencers, and they don't, as you exactly enunciated, they're not looking for payment. They're just looking for access to products they can't afford to go and buy themselves. And if they can get access, they're really happy to create content because they often have time on their hands. So that is one unique little piece. And we teach people, and I'm going to talk about the scaling brands in a sec. We'll come back to that. But a piece that we both have alluded to is a contract. So I want to ask you, like, for the brands listening today in the earlier stages where we are just more talking about reviews or UGC or some little bit of amplification, perhaps there's no payment involved, it's more free product. What are your best tips? Because and I say that by reminding you that I mentioned earlier, quite a lot of our audience say, I sent a bunch of free product out and I never got anything back in return. And I'm like, well, did you do a contract? And they're like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, there is your problem. So tell us, what tips have you got for those ladies?
I mean, a contract and a good old ChatGPT, wow, it can really help you create a fantastic one. But a contract, I think, really solidifies the fact that this is a business deal. And, if there's not that I would ever expect anyone to have a repercussion, but think about the contract, not just in terms of getting your deliverables back, but think positively about when you do get your deliverables back, especially if you're working with these great micro creators, what is it going to look like when you don't have the rights and the usage to that content? Because it's fantastic to have a review, but then what if you can't use that review in marketing? And I know that these are things that it feels so overwhelming, especially when you're new. But a usage and a marketing rights conversation is going to be so easy with that 2,000 follower content creator, as opposed to the 50,000 person content creator that's managed, because it can become a complicated conversation. So I would say always make sure that there's a contract, make sure that it's really clear with what you expect back, and just be comfortable with follow-ups. I know that I've seen a bit of naming and shaming, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think Australia is just so small, and I think we can focus more on the positive outcomes than the negative ones, even if the negatives really feel quite heavy. And I guess the last thing would be don't give something for free that you can't stomach losing as a business owner, because it could happen and you have other things to keep you awake at night other than, a contra collab.
Oh my God, 1,000,000% yes. I say the same thing. If it's going to hurt you to send those products out financially, you shouldn't be doing it. But I want to ask you then, in an agreement or a contract, is it okay to have penalties if they don't deliver? And I say this knowing that in our brand agreement we do. It says, we'll send you an invoice for the products if you don't deliver it in a Dropbox file that we've given you within a certain time period. And I have done a tiny bit of influencing myself as a Lisa Jones brand, and people send me product and then they don't give me any context. There's no, here's what we'd like, here's how you should tag. And so I end up in this situation where I think, what do they expect from me? I am such a fan of transparency. For God's sakes, ladies, tell them exactly what you want in return for what you're sending out and make it fair and equitable and really obvious. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I definitely think the delivery is only going to be as good as it's brief. I think treat this relationship as you would any other content creator. If it was a graphic designer, treat that relationship quite the same, that until you build rapport and you can allow for creative freedom, there need to be guardrails. So things like what channel you want it on, the format, the length, if you want them to avoid saying certain things. So if you don't want them to say that you're better than your competitor because that's not what you want to do, make sure that they don't mention that brand, because that can happen sometimes. Giving them a clear deadline, asking if you want the raw files for anything. These are all important things to consider. And, it's definitely a long checklist. So maybe we need to make a Shecom checklist so that they've got it. Your information is only going to be as good as your brief. So making sure that you're clear is important. And then in terms of penalties, I think do what feels best for you. So there are brands that have penalties. There are brands that don't have penalties. I would say in terms of the brands that I have partnered with or worked with over the years, 70 to 80% won't have penalties, except for the really big brands. If you are working with a very large creator where this is a sizable investment, I would always have penalties. Reason being is that's kind of like a scary amount of money that could be like floating in your marketing fund and P&L that if not actioned would have been invested somewhere else. Because I always count like the minute the parcel leaves the door, I count that influencer invoice into a P&L. Whether we've had the invoice or not, like whether the cash flows come out, it doesn't really matter. I'm counting that because I'm assuming they're going to deliver because that's the biggest thing that I can do to protect my brand's P&L. So put in a penalty if this is a sizable percentage of your marketing fund, because if not, it could be a month late and then you've missed your monthly target because you had that happen, or alternatively, it messes up cash flow down the line. So that's a very finance question, but I think finance and influencer marketing have to go hand in hand to an extent because it's an investment.
100%. And as you said, that money could have been put into other places. So I love that. But let's talk a little bit now about the bigger brands. So in the she-com world, which I live in, that's probably the brands that are doing anywhere from 50 grand a month to $1 million a month. So those kind of revenue brands, they sometimes have a few team. We're going to talk a little bit later with you around like how they might find their first marketing hires because it's such a hot topic. But let's stay with influencers for a bit longer. I know there's a lot of experience of women who've invested money into paid influencer roles where it hasn't worked. And I'd love to know from you, like, how do they get this right? Give us some examples perhaps of some of the paid influencer pieces that are working in the best possible scenario right now in 2025.
So the best paid influencer pieces, and I might save the most exciting example for last because I feel like this is going to be the big trend we see, or it's the one that I feel like is about to take off. The best thing is, like, if you want bang for buck, it's always going to be an Instagram story. So that is where you want to find that investment. It's going to be the cheapest thing to purchase. And again, think about it in purchasing of ad space. So it's going to be the cheapest thing to purchase, but keep in mind that you're going to have the lowest audience with that, and it's only going to last for 24 hours. So you want to make sure that you have usage and rights opportunity to reuse that content if it is a testimonial or if it's a try on haul or if it's anything that you believe has life outside of 24 hours. The next thing after that, and this is hard because this is the most expensive on the flip side, is a TikTok series. So with TikTok, I never recommend buying one piece of TikTok content because it is such a gamble as to whether or not it's going to engage. So over a month period, you want to invest in 3 to 5 pieces of TikTok because the key to TikTok is frequency. So if you really want that TikTok creator, you need to invest in 3 to 5 pieces of content with them over the entire month so that you actually have the opportunity to go viral. Now that's the highest risk, but that also can be the highest reward because if one of those first 2 goes viral, the remainder will also tend to go viral because of how the TikTok rhythm tends to pick things up. And then the last one is, and this probably feeds into the employee conversation also well, I think this year is going to be the rise of EGC influencer content.
I was hoping we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So, and I think this is not just like, having my own staff be influencers, but like the Naked Harvest team, we do like so many different things, which, I'll be transparent. None of it, we are not taking revenue from any other brands. We just want to chat about something other than our product, right? We want to create engaging content. So we're having lunch everywhere on the Gold Coast. They have a series where they drop office tea. We're doing a makeover haul at the moment. And the cool thing about the makeover in the office is that we're partnering with some homeware brands where we're like, okay, well, we'll give you exposure across our social channels. Can you give us something? So we're starting to get into the contra phase of it. But I have evidence proof of people working with other brands that have employees where they have sold out runs of clothing on a Fit Check Friday with those employees, or they've sold hundreds of a product off of a review. And sometimes it's planned and it's organic, and then other times it's just integrated, so it feels organic. But EGC is no longer just about your employees. It's actually about the entire workforce now.
I love this so much. And I think, like, would you include brand founder in EGC kind of content as well? So like brand founder stories or brand founder reels where they're like you said, doing a fit check in the office, those kind of things. That all forms inside of this. So for our beautiful listeners, we're talking about employee generated content. And I think, like, why do you think, I'm not going to say why I think, because this is not my genius zone, but it's yours, sweetheart. Like, why do you think that people have moved away a little bit from user generated content to employee generated content?
I think it's because everyone knows user generated is generally not as organic anymore. I think that there's been the rise of the UGC creator, and there's all of these digital ebooks that people can buy that teach them how to make six figures being a UGC creator. And I think that means the market's become really oversaturated. And sometimes those people deliver great content, sometimes it's really bad content. And the conversation, they're just not creators because not everybody's a content creator. So, it's not as raw and authentic as it used to be. But I think with EGC, one, people have this huge desire to know what's happening behind the business. And that is not just the employees. Like as a founder, like you are included in that EGC concept, but people want to know what's going on behind the business, but they also just like want to get to know you. So it's not just about running of the business. There's this like huge desire for people to get to know people that they would otherwise know nothing about. And it's kind of weird because it's a very unpersonal way to get really personal with someone. So, yeah.
Do you think this has happened? Like, okay, so I talk a little bit about how, let's go with like maybe 8 years ago on Instagram. If you had a really great feed on Instagram, it was about curated and perfected, say, stories, posts, and reels, but you could get really good engagement and you could build an audience and you could feed them back to your Shopify store and you could make lots of money. And I don't think that happens anymore. And I think we still need to keep Instagram as a bit of a staged perfection place. But then you have like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and they're like the opposite, right? They require the complete opposite strategy, which is like, keep it raw, keep it real, keep it like fresh and current and quick because and look, I'm 47 this year and I don't do TikTok and I so need to. And everybody should just whip me for this because it's so bad as a social media and e-commerce expert, but I'm just too old for it, I think. And I watch all the little kids, like my 13-year-old included, and she's like, flick, flick, flick. It's like a 1 second thing. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, you're killing your brain. But would this be part of this concept that EGC is more authentic and real and often quick and engaging? And I suppose it's more real, isn't it? Like real life as opposed to staged.
It's more entertaining. Like, I think that it's like the next evolution of like all of us loving reality TV shows, because TikTok will tell you that their competitor is not Instagram. Their competitor is Netflix. So what form of entertainment are you able to provide? Because your daughter, like you said, she's going through the 1 second slip. You want to make it to 3 seconds. What happens if we make it to 7? You completely change their algorithm and then you completely get shown to this customer. So it's hard because TikTok is not going to be the instant recipe for success for most people, but it is the easiest way to organically find your people. Like, it has the most powerful algorithm to do that.
So what do you think then for brands that we're talking specifically about, say EGC for say TikTok and Instagram, like what do they have to be humorous? Are we comedians now? Like how do we approach this? Because I'm not funny. It's not my thing. But when I go to do more serious business posts, I'm like, how do I educate and add value? But then engagement's crap. So like talk to our beautiful audience and give them something uplifting that makes them realize they too can be funny.
So you need to really find the creators that sit within your niche and I think take the best practices from them. And I'll use an example of someone who is a creator who her TikToks just keep going viral and she sits in that like educational coaching space. Her name's Beck Stewart. She's like a habit hacker, basically, right? So her whole life is about habit hacking and she is all about discipline. And if you educated people about business in the way that she educates people about habit hacking, you have to find your audience. She's got a strong hook. She's got clean content. She's got clear messaging. They're all aligned with her brand pillars. There are brands that you 1,000% can be really funny, but there's also brands that like what makes sense even from EGC, like what do the people that are within your audience care about and how do you almost create pillars for that avatar so that you can continuously find them through the algorithm. If you've got a sustainable brand, what are other things that you can talk about in terms of reducing your impact that could help validate you in that market? How can you educate in that way? If you're a fashion brand, how can you showcase? And this thing, I know that people do this, but how in a more raw, organic, authentic way can you share parts of the production process or styling or, and in a way that's not as curated as Instagram. And then if you just find the frequency, you definitely can get there. But it is any of the top creators that you speak to, and I will always reference creators because I think they nailed it before brands did. Any of them, they were posting 3 times a day, which is really daunting. But I think like with TikTok, just put it up. The worst thing that happens is it doesn't go anywhere. And then no one actually sees that. Like there's not really a bad outcome in what the options are.
Oh my gosh. I just feel sick 3 times a day. I know I have to do it.
Yeah, 3 times a day. And the thing is like most brands aren't able to do that. Like Naked Harvest really struggles to do that. It's a big bandwidth thing. But depending on your niche and depending on your industry, like how can you use AI to create more content? How can you repurpose Instagram content? Like this can kind of just be your channel where you just like throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. And you can't do that with most channels.
So let's talk about AI then. Like this is such a common theme. And I think for 2025, you said earlier that you're going to share with us the best example that you had of EGC.
So the best example that I have of EGC is actually Jazz Handmade. So they are a Gold Coast brand. And this brand has created, it was formed by an influencer. So again, like you follow what they're doing because they nailed it first, right? Jazz has basically created herself and 3 mini influencers within her team by posting really general, everyday, day-to-day stuff. This is between like them going to get sandwiches or them doing their Fit Check Fridays, them doing matcha tastings. And I would be very surprised if brands are not gifting these girls because not only and you have to have the right mindset for this. And I know Jazz would have a great mindset about this. You have to be okay with your team almost becoming talent and having pages of their own, because all 3 of her team members, not only do I follow the Jazz Handmade page, not only do I follow Jazz Hand, but I also follow all of their team members on their socials as well. And the amount of engagement for free that brand has just gotten from me is wild.
I'm going to stalk them later.
Oh, they're so phenomenal. Really smart girls and just fun content. And some of it's silly. Sometimes it's a TikTok trend sound. They do a really great one that's like what everybody spent each week, which is hilarious because if someone like really did something dumb and went a little bit crazy, it's like very obvious because someone has spent $1,000 more than someone else. Like, yeah.
That's so fun.
But they've just done such a good job. And there's quite a few. I think the Gold Coast, we kind of get to be like the, I guess, cultural like spot of, or maybe not cultural is not the right word, but like the social media spot of innovation for a lot of things. And I would put a lot of other brands in that same category. But I think Jazz Handmade has done the best job because they now have over 100,000 followers on TikTok. And a lot of brands, especially brands that size, would not have anywhere near that.
That's incredible. I'm going to go and stalk them and find out. And I agree, the Gold Coast is very entrepreneurial. A lot of really clever, cool brands are birthed in this area. Let's go back to something you just mentioned around AI. I know it's such a contentious topic right now, and to some extent probably makes me presently feel a little bit icky because I guess I'm kind of concerned about where AI might take us, but it's also a massive opportunity for businesses to use it in the influencer and social media space. Like, what should we know about AI?
The biggest thing is like AI is so your friend. And I'll say like, I had that little bit of a nerve where I'm like, oh my God, as a marketer, like, am I ever? No, do you know what? AI has taken away the part of my job that maybe I'm not that good at, or maybe that I just don't have the time to do. And it can become really, really efficient. And once you train AI, like, oh, the magic that ChatGPT can do now that it knows me is just phenomenal. But when it comes to influencer marketing, things like supporting with contracts, even sending it your brief and saying like, does this make sense? What do you believe I will get back from this? Like, it's almost like having a free, or, if you pay for the plan, $35 assistant that will be able to tell you exactly what they're interpreting from this. It's also really great with, helping support negotiations and even creating like, I've hired, and I know that we won't talk about hiring, but like, I've hired this junior. What key deliverables should I have them do? Like what can outreach numbers do? Because ChatGPT will actually break down, well, you've got them for, 10 hours a week. So let me break down all of these tasks that can be achieved in those 10 hours. And it's kind of nice having something that those are all tasks that I don't want to put emotion into. I want it to be black and white. And ChatGPT spits out exactly what I need. So, there are other ways, not ChatGPT, but other AIs to kind of like break up content. And I think that still has a while to go. Like I'm yet to see a piece of content that I think is fantastic that's coming out of AI, but where we can learn to work smarter and not, harder, like every single woman listening, like you'd work really hard already. Like, why do we want to put the extra stress on ourselves?
It's very true. What about Sora? Have you seen anyone? Is that where you're like not sure if it's going to work yet?
I'm not sure if it's going to work because even though I love, like, I'm on Book Talk, like probably the rest of the world, and I love every Zayden, Brorson, fourth wing visual that I'm being given. But from a brand, I feel like it takes the soul a little bit out of the brand, or it just looks really, just everything looks just a little bit fake. And I think that's where a lot of brands take off, is because they have this unique secret sauce. And ChatGPT will never have the secret sauce. I don't believe it can, because it doesn't have spirit in that way. So any of the AIs personally, I don't think will take that space. Even the like product AIs, like, and this has been happening in ecom, at least at like an enterprise level for the past 6 years. You'll have a search provider that's like, you don't need to take photos anymore at ecom. It can all be on AI models. It's all bad. Unless you're Levi's are the only people who've done it well. It's been happening for years. I don't think that it'll catch on. It's like uncanny valley, doesn't feel natural, doesn't look real. So
definitely they're not the creative, but certainly the captions, and also being smart about it. We too here at SheCom, we have Sienna, who's our ChatGPT model, who we've trained to within an inch of her life, and the stuff she spits out for us in seconds is like phenomenal. And I agree. It's like having an assistant. It's like, I suppose I have 3 in my marketing team at SheCom, and she's like a 4th person. She totally can run so much, and job descriptions for new team members and KPIs and success metrics. She can give us in minutes something that I would avoid for weeks.
Yes, exactly. And I think it comes down to, what do you not need to have a zone of genius in? It is okay to not be amazing and good at everything. And there's actually a huge sense of power in stepping back and being like, this is not worth my time. So save your time for the secret sauce that cannot be replicated by anyone other than you, and, delegate to your little friend ChatGPT, all the things. But it will only be as good as you train it. So definitely invest the time and the education into how to train your ChatGPT and how to prompt your ChatGPT, because when you first open it up, it's going to give you some really bad responses.
Takes a while. So then let's go to the topic we said at the start we're going to chat about, to do with marketing team. And I know because a lot of the visitors and guests that I have here on the podcast are brand founders. But what I love about you, and why we've had such a great opportunity to work together on stages a few times now, is that you are not a brand founder, but you are like a marketing genius. And a lot of really cool brands have brought you in to help them with this marketing and influencer piece. And that's because your background is, you were born in the US, and one of your first internships was with the Kardashians. And you've really cut your teeth in a space that was ahead of us here in Australia, and then come out here. And I suppose to some extent, your knowledge of, say, for brands in Australia growing into the US too is so valuable to helping brands understand how to harness influencers in the States. Like, you have so many different genius zones. How do my brands all find you, Chantel? Tell us.
Gosh. Okay. So I would like to think that there's a lot more of me is probably sitting around in the industry than people would think. But I think one big thing is everything that I know is because I have had brilliant leaders around me. I have been able to be mentored by phenomenal people in the industry, because without that, like, I'm not just going to magically, like, I have some cool creative ideas sometimes that I can say like have come from my brain. But if not, it's because I had that, phenomenal CFO who told me about financial intimacy and really empowered me in that way. Or, I had the phenomenal person who, really taught me about the fundamentals of ecom so that I could make my creative campaigns work, because I was too creative and, nothing was sticking. So I think figuring out where people come from, like, I know we always look at like, where have they worked previously, but hiring from brands that you admire, not because of their revenue, but because of their output, is really important, because they're going to have absorbed some of the operational ways that business work is really big.
So sorry, let's just reframe that for our listeners for a sec. What you mean is, when you're looking for applicants, choose applicants that have worked in interesting companies, that have really great leadership and have done really aspirational pieces, because it means that team member will have been involved in learning and being juiced up by the cool stuff the company was doing.
1,000%. That was a great way to explain it, much better than I had just done. I think that's because I have never had to be a cog in my career. And because I've never just been a cog, it means that I have been able to have great experiences. And there are companies that you can have excellent careers at, and these are the big corporate enterprise. But if someone has had a lane that they've never had to deviate from, I don't believe they're ready for a founder lane business, because you need to be ready to go into whatever lane you need to go to, even if it's like head on different direction of traffic when you're working for a founder led business, and you have to really like it. I think at the end of every day in this industry, like there are days where we might feel like absolutely defeat, but never once have I not been like, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and do that all over again.
You are so bang on right. And I need to share now the story of my head of marketing here at SheCom. So she came from, definitely had an enterprise level experience as a marketing lead before, but she came prior to SheCom from around about a 30 million a year revenue brand. So still not massive, but also not little. And as part of the interview process, when we were interviewing our top few candidates for what I think we called like senior marketing manager was the title, was me asking her, how hands-on the tools can you be? Like, obviously we're bringing you in for lead, which means you're strategizing, but can you get your hands dirty? And she was like, yeah, I can. And she's been with us nearly a year and she's absolutely phenomenal. And I think the interesting thing is that it wouldn't be a role for everybody, because some people would run away, because we are in survival a lot. And I ask her to flick between 19 different projects every day. And I ask her to get hands on in a lot of them. And she's literally everywhere all the time. And that is like 24/7. And I think, we pay well. There's a lot of perks for working at SheCom, but I think that isn't everybody. You're 100% right. If you've come from enterprise, you're not going to be thriving in that. You're going to be not happy in that kind of work environment.
Yeah, I think you have to be okay with a bit of challenge and a bit of adversity. And I think that that's a level of resilience that you can't train. And as a founder, you shouldn't have to train. So like, I would not take that on. I think one other really big thing, especially, we've talked about TikTok, we've talked about influencers. Sometimes that requires somebody who's a bit finger on the pulse and possibly a bit younger, right? Finding people that you can trust and hiring based on trust and personality for those roles. There may not be a tactical skill set that you can hire based on, but I've had this conversation actually quite a few times recently about remote work and expectations from remote work. And if you can't trust your employee to work remotely, then just don't hire them, especially with where we're at in e-com. Like, especially if there's somebody in social media, if you have that anxious, unsure feeling. And I know that this is controversial, but I would say figure out what's causing that feeling and kind of assess it within yourself before bringing on someone in a creative, extrovert-driven, always switched on role and requiring them to do a standard 9 to 5 in an office 5 days a week, because they're just not built that way. They can work their full-time hours, but they're not built for, I guess, that level of, I don't want to say structure, but I'll say monotony. It just doesn't work for me. I actually unfortunately saw someone it was a phenomenal team member who had 4 job offers come in from great brands, and she wouldn't take them because she lives an hour outside the city and didn't want to commute 5 days a week because she knows that it dulls her creativity, and it was a role that could be done for anywhere. So because she wasn't met in the middle, she was like, nope, no, thank you. And it's wild because that is like an employee that I like stand on, is one of the most phenomenal I've dealt with in my career. And I'm like, you guys have just missed out on a gem. And it was just it wasn't about money. It was about flexibility and trust.
Well, I can share here at SheCom that we've just acquired the most incredible team member as our head of sales, and her story is almost identical. 3-year-old and a 5-month-old, and lives on the Gold Coast and is done with driving to Brisbane every day to live in an office where she can't, be there for the kids if there's somebody sick. So we've managed to pick her up in a remote hybrid role as a result of that kind of thing. So I think flicking it back to our listeners, like as female brand founders that are looking to acquire part-time and full-time marketing team, there's so many things we've just touched on, their background and their availability and their desire and appetite to work in a fast-moving environment, but also their age. And I mean, I just literally dobbed myself in here to being a fucking turtle with regards to TikTok. But we look at juniors in the team and we think, well, we need young people because they're much more agile and knowledgeable about viral and short-form video content, which forms a really big part of our marketing strategies these days. So I guess based on all of those pieces, which clearly sounds like you agree with, like, let's talk very specifically. I feel like we've covered off the full-time hires, and I'm assuming you're talking about LinkedIn ads and maybe Seek ads. Is there any other way that you think full-time hires could be found and acquired? I mean, do you see people like stalking and cold outreaching to really cool marketers? Like what's your take on full-timers?
Yeah, look, I love the cold outreach. I think that it's really ballsy on the brand, and I think that it's cool, but it means you've done your research as well. And you'd be surprised, not necessarily like who's not loyal, but like you can find somebody who's at there. And like when I think about like when I started at Pedal and Pup, like Philip found me, but also like I found Philip. I needed the relationship I had. Just to give kind of like listeners context, is I was the first full-time hire, and I found someone who was willing to give me kind of the freedom to try something new and do cool stuff. And he just wanted someone that was going to build something. So it was so mutually beneficial for us that, it panned out normally. I feel like, or sorry, brilliantly, not normally. I feel like Seek is actually just such a dud, and it's so freaking expensive. Like if you are hiring for a marketing level, like a specific marketing role, and you want someone who's switched on, don't go on Seek. Like if you want most operational roles actually don't go on LinkedIn. Like you want warehouse, don't go on LinkedIn. But for a lot of these roles, like you want someone whose finger is on the pulse. So you want somebody who is on LinkedIn, who's keeping up to date with the most recent technology and the most recent trends. And don't be afraid to like search Gold Coast marketer, Brisbane marketer, like pop that into TikTok. The SEO is so powerful. And one thing marketing girlies love is documenting their day. So not saying you'll just hire women, but like if I wanted to find a marketing girly, then it's a really great way to find marketing girlies on TikTok, because it's almost kind of like this inspirational thing where you just get to showcase your day. Because really, like, we don't like work, like we don't have normal jobs compared to other people. Like the amount of cool things that are different we get to do in a week is crazy. So people document it.
I love that so much. And I actually got a refund from Seek the last time I placed a Seek ad, because 3 weeks in, the only candidates I'd really had, and it was quite a high level role, the only candidates I'd had were like overseas or like waitresses. I was like, guys, this is so bad. So I only do LinkedIn ads now, or as you've mentioned, we cold outreach, or we go inside of our communities. So we actually have always on ads on LinkedIn and always on our careers website and our actual business page as well, looking for roles that we know we're always going to need to keep our finger on the pulse for. So I think that's important. But let's go to the part-time, my beautiful listeners who don't have the budget for a full-time marketer. There's a lot of them, and they are looking for what might traditionally be a freelancer. Now, I'm going to preface this by sharing my thoughts are that a lot of freelancers charge quite a lot of money for, say, 10 hours a week. And in actual fact, maybe more of the old school marketers that are perhaps not as current or trending. But I'd love your thoughts on how my amazing women are going to find 5 to 10 hours a week, which is what a lot of them want. And it really gets some social, maybe a little bit of email, and perhaps, coherent strategies on both. And that is absolutely a need a lot of my clients have.
Yeah, I think looking first and foremost, like, within, and I'm like you said, the She-Com community does a lot for the market, but even posting on their own socials, like looking really particularly for their roles. When we think about like women supporting other women, there are probably women who are ready to enter the workforce as a VA or as a social media content coordinator or as customer care or any of those things that you want to take off. But like maybe they just want to work from home for those 10 hours a week because they have a bub. And I think that like we've proven that we can do both. So why not give those women an opportunity? Because they're not going to be on LinkedIn or Seek looking for this. But if it shows up, then, the stars will align and the universe will give you exactly what you need. I am hit and miss with, I think, like the freelance contractor space. I think I've got like my little group that I've had nothing but phenomenal experiences with, and will recommend them left, right, and center. And then recently, like every graphic designer I know has been put up with capacity, and it's really tough to find somebody, So with that, I actually prefer to try to give Fiverr a chance for some of these things. Because if I'm going to take a stab at the dark, I'd rather take a stab at the dark at $20 an hour than $120 an hour, just because it's a little bit safer. But I think this is all where like contracts also come into place. Like, are you going to deliver the type of work? Are you willing to put your money where your mouth is and do a trial run for me? Because I know that a strong candidate is worth the $50, $60, $70 an hour. I just don't want to pay someone who learned that was the price they deserve off TikTok. I want someone who's earned their merit for that, and I will pay for that if that's the case. So Rise and Conquer, which is one of the brands that I work with, was very heavily just people, like every single person was a person in the community who got a job through, hearing about the job or just randomly emailed. So every time someone emails you asking you if you have a job, just like save it, create a little inbox. You never know what's going to happen, but they like you enough to reach out because they want to work with you. So there's probably ways, but yeah.
And also your own database of customers. Like that to me is where we find a lot of our team, is by emailing out inside of our community and asking who's got these skills that wants to apply. And we get constant applications through that as well. So I think there's a million amazing tips there. I want to ask one final question before we wrap up the podcast today, Chantel, around balance. So as a marketer, like, can you give me any ideas of how you find life balance? And I say that by knowing that you probably throw yourself headfirst into your role. And I'd love to know how you find balance in life.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, this could be a whole episode in itself. I've gone on a big personal journey over the last couple of years of finding that balance, because I definitely pushed myself to the brink of breakdown because I love what I do so much. But the big things that I have implemented have been finding things that fill my cup up that are outside of the industry as much as I am addicted to it. So for me, that's really just been being really strict with my boundaries on my, workout routine, on, using meditation apps. And like, I now have appointments with myself that are just as important as the appointments that I would have with a brand, because I can't fill up from an empty cup. And then the other thing is, which I think this is trending on social media, because I saw a meme and I'm like, are you making fun of me, or is every woman in her 30s and 40s now doing this? But magnesium. I take magnesium every night before I go to sleep, and I actually have better sleep. And I didn't realize how much my sleep had been declining, and I feel like a different person. So being strict with boundaries and taking magnesium is like literally, and look, we all need therapy. God bless therapy. So, yeah.
I love that so much. I couldn't agree more on all of the points. And I think a woman who's explored therapy to understand what drives her and then how she can have a happier life needing less is like a goal for winning, right?
Yeah. And I think like with that, and this was the biggest thing that I had to learn in order to create this balance, was that so my direct success in my career did not impact my value as a human being, which is why I said, we could have a whole episode on this, but, we all have so much joy in the success of what we do, and it does empower us, but know that that is not your only superpower. There are so many other things that light you up and that make you so important. And you need to like literally compartmentalize that and know that work is not your only personality trait. Despite the fact that we let that happen, it's not.
Thank you so much, Chantel. And to our beautiful listeners today, if you loved this episode, please head on over to my Instagram. It's at LisaJones_co and DM me. I'd love to hear from you and find out what your golden nugget from today's episode was. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of She Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked ideas, gave you strategies you can put into action, and reminded you that you're never alone on this journey. If you loved this episode, head over to shecom.co for today's show notes, exclusive freebies, and special offers from our sponsors. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Until next time, keep showing up, keep building, and most importantly, keep talking.